At its core, Indigenous LED champions a healing movement, one that respects the intricate bonds between land, people, and culture. This is Lailani Upham with Indigenous LED, and I am here with Cristina Mormorunni and Ervin Carlson at the Kiln Community Center in Park City, Utah, and we are going to talk about the movement and the start of Indigenous LED, some of the things that are important, and we hope you enjoy this podcast.
My name is Cristina Mormorunni, and I'm the co-founder and director of Indigenous LED.
My name is Ervin Carlson. I am the director of the Blackfoot Tribe Buffalo program, but also I am the co-founder of Indigenous LED. So I've been with the Blackfoot Tribe Buffalo program since 1996 is when Buffalo were put under my direction, and then away from it for a few years, but then actually the tribe bringing me back to take it over again. And then since then, my passion with Buffalo, bringing them back to our lands at Blackfeet, and for really bringing them back, first and foremost, for our cultural and spiritual connection to the animal. Which has been gone for so long from not only our tribe, but all of the tribes that had buffalo. So they're a big part of us, just as many other things that were taken away from us, buffalo were. So buffalo is, to me, my way of helping to bring back a big part of our culture that was taken away and helping restore that, but restore a lot of things that go along with it, of healing of our lands, healing of our people, bringing back into our ceremonies, having those available, and even for consumption for our people, for a healthy food source. So my passion and role in that has been bringing those back and leading on further on to creating Indigenous LED to help these animals also be the way they should be. There's always this conception that they don't belong out in the wild, that they're not wildlife. And they are, and they belong out there just as all of the other wildlife, our deer, our elk, moose, all of those who are able to roam free anywhere. That's always been a thought of mine, that why can't they be out there just like the rest of the wildlife? But they're targeted. That's why they're such a close relative to us, is that the same thing as us as Indian people. We're also targeted, put on reservations, not being able to leave, confined to that. So Indigenous LED now, through when we first started on to where we're at now, is to create a free roaming herd along our mountain front, and to see those to be able to live back into the ecosystem and being a part of that and being a big healing there. But the biggest part too is being back what they are, is to be wildlife, be among all the rest of the wildlife, and to be able to roam freely as they should be able to do. So that's a big role of mine, along with Indigenous LED, of leading that charge of making that happen and making people aware that's what needs to happen, and being respectful of this animal, which means so much to us, to create a safe space for them and for them to be respected.
I think Ervin's done an amazing job of really speaking to our origin story and our origin responsibility that gave birth to Indigenous LED, which was to restore free roaming buffalo to Blackfoot territory. In conceptualizing why does Indigenous LED exist? What do we do? How do we do it? One of the things that we really recognize is that we can get buffalo out on the land. We can do that, but the need is so much bigger than just buffalo on the land, because what we're really talking about is people's lives hanging in the balance, the land hanging in the balance, the planet hanging in the balance. And what Indigenous LED firmly believes is that the Indigenous way of knowing and being is really the last great hope we have to turn things around. We're a small organization. We're a startup. We're not going to stop until buffalo are free roaming in Blackfoot territory, but we're being called to do so many different things, and things at an even bigger scale, in order to really amplify and hold up that as a model. Because the work in Blackfoot has been happening for a long time now, well before my involvement. Ervin's been involved in it since the beginning, but it's far along. There's been some great victories, some great successes, some great stories, hundreds of community meetings calling for buffalo to come back. That's huge. Buffalo coming back to Blackfeet territory from Elk Island National Park in Canada as calves to come home and grow up in their traditional homelands to be the animals that are released again. So we have this amazing responsibility in Blackfeet, but again, how do we elevate that? And so one of the things that Indigenous Led thinks about is we call it our how. We have a body of work that's centered in, restoring animals, rematriating animals is a scientific question. We have Indigenous science to draw on, traditional knowledge to draw on, and Western science to draw on. How do we braid that together? How do we know when to draw on one of those tools and when to draw on a different one? We recognize that we can't do this alone. So we devote a lot of time to building a sacred constellation of relationships through diplomacy. We use diplomacy also to think about what's the political landscape? What are the political and policy changes that are needed to support this work at the tribal level, at the state level, at the federal level, at the continental scale? How do we engage our youth and our elders and really build that relationship again with youth and elders to their buffalo, to their brother Eni, to the homelands, to the landscape? Storytelling, art. Not only are those really important ways in which we can elevate the voices that aren't heard, stories are healing. Stories are medicine. Art is healing. Art is medicine. I don't know that we've ever lived in a more divided time. Data and facts aren't going to unite us. Good diplomacy? Yes, but it's not going to take us the whole way. But what if we can touch people's hearts, even past the steel indifference they put over those hearts through our stories, through our art? How can we bring healing to our people, to the land, and to everyone else? How do we come together? So we draw on a lot of these different tools and trying to really bring home not just the buffalo, but the vision for how we can heal the world and protect the world and celebrate the amazing cultures that have gotten us to this moment in time. In some ways, I think the greatest success that Indigenous Led has is the incredible team that we have created space for and that has shown up. We have beautiful people that are working together, and we talk about that we work as a family. And I've been doing this work for a long time, and I have never had that kind of sacred relationship be the foundation and the grounding for the work. And it is true magic. And we are trying to create something that has never existed. And the fact that we have people who are magic, who love each other, who are humble and hungry and smart and bring all different kinds of experience without ego, without arrogance, without an I, that it's always a we. That is one of the most incredible successes of my life, to be a part of that. And everything flows from that. So is it any surprise that we've had these incredible global influencers show up and want to be a part of our work, like Jane Goodall or Yoma, or elders in our community that are coming out and want to be a part of it? Every layer of society is showing up, trying to figure out what they can bring, what love they can bring, what art they can bring, what soul and spirit and culture they can bring. It's incredible. 49 buffalo raced out of 3 trailers a year ago on Blackfoot lands at the base of Nanastico, Sacred Mountain. We have a long way to go. We learned a lot, but that too is a success. So we've had so many successes, but the biggest is the people and the opportunity to be in deeper relationship in service to our relatives.
Just thinking about Cristina talking about the things that we've done since Indigenous Led, and actually since starting the Eni initiative. And I went through a lot of years where it felt, why am I doing this? And there's not so many people that want to do this or aware. But since we've started that, first starting the ENE initiative and then on to now creating Indigenous LED and creating the team that we do have, and it's really true that to work with people who have the same passion as you and realizing that the importance of bringing back this lost part of our culture and how important that is to not only us, but all of our people. And especially along the way involving our youth and then having our elders there to teach those youth stories from our past. We've lost a lot of that. And I see through Indigenous LED, the ENE initiative, the Buffalo program, that we brought a lot of this back where we're able to tell these stories to our youth and to let them know a big part of their history. Because I grew up not hearing these stories, hearing this part of our history. And now we've created that. Early on, we done a short documentary, and I talked about how I grew up not knowing buffalo, not seeing buffalo within our lands. And now I want my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids to all be able to grow up seeing buffalo, knowing how important they are to us, and having them there on the landscape to be able to see and be a part of their lives. So those things are real. We've come a long way since creating both the initiative and Indigenous LED and bringing people together in a good way, creating, as Cristina says, that love for this and for each other. And one of the big things that I always talk about too, that a lot of things that we've lost is respect. So we bring a lot of that back with what we're doing within the Buffalo. But I always go back to that. We're doing this. I've been doing it a lot of years. And I always go back to the thought of when I had come to me that thinking that I'm working and doing all of these things and meeting a lot of people along the way and going places. But it came on me and it was working, bringing back those buffalo from Canada, from Elk Island, that made me come to the realization that them buffalo made everything happen. They're so powerful, so spiritual, that they made all of these things happen along the way. And especially, I can go into a real long story of mine, how I came to be here. But that day, it made me realize that they made all of this happen and they made it happen the way they want and showing their power and bringing a lot of people together and from a lot of different areas. And just from even like us here, for us being here, those animals, they have made all of that happen. And it's a real healing thing to our people. And we do need a lot of healing. We really do need that. There's a long ways to go. There still are barriers. There's still hurdles that we do have to overcome. But I believe with the strength and the spirituality of these animals that we will overcome those all. And to have a lot of things in place that should be there that we've lost. And they're the ones leading the way. Them buffalo are the ones leading the way to that.
Ervin and I co-founded Indigenous LED in March of 22, and the reason that we founded it was a recognition that Indigenous voices weren't being heard. Indigenous ways of knowing and being and doing weren't part of the conversation. They were an afterthought when it came to protecting the planet.
The reason that Indigenous LED is so important to me is in our history as Indian people, that we have always been somebody else trying to tell our story. Non-natives, that's continually been our history. Everybody not knowing, but thinking that they know what's best for us, for our land, or for whatever we may be doing, that it was always that thought. So Indigenous LED to me is that we're telling our story from us and we're leading the way. And not somebody else saying, no, you guys are wrong, that our way is right. So we're getting our voice out there, letting people know that we can do this, we can do it our way, and we feel that it's the right way for us and for our ways. And it's coming from us, so that makes it, to me, I guess it makes it just the right way to me. Coming from me, our people, and letting them know in whatever we may do, and especially what we're doing with buffalo, that somebody else can't speak for us and really know from here what we want, the way we want it, and the way it should be for us. So that's what it means to me, is getting that message out there, that we know what we're doing, we know what we want, and we're going to lead that way.
I've had the privilege of working in conservation in so many different countries, so many different contexts. and the privilege of working with so many different nations on these issues. And I also spent a lot of time working in the nonprofit sector, working for environmental organizations. And the conversations were about species and species management plans and protected area designations and maximum sustainable yield and maximum sustainable catch. And we never talked about our relatives. We never talked about that this was work that was love and responsibility and devotion. Part of the genesis of Indigenous Led for me, Ervin and I were actually at a meeting about Yellowstone buffalo. And the conversation was, are we going to kill 600 buffalo, 636 buffalo, 400 buffalo, 300 buffalo? And we never in the room heard the voice of buffalo or anybody really having the space to talk about buffalo as a brother and a relative. And I walked out of that meeting and I thought, how would the conversation be different if we were deciding how many of our aunties we were going to kill, or our uncles, or our grandparents, or our mothers, or our brothers? And I really felt like our responsibility is to change the conversation. And because the forces of colonization and genocide have been so profound and continue to be so profound, it is very hard for Indigenous voices to be in the room, let alone create the conversation in the room or set the stage in the room. And until we have Indigenous power elevated, amplified, celebrated, we're still going to be talking about species. And we're going to still watch trillions of dollars invested in strategies that are failing. And our Mother Earth is dying. And we don't have much time. So that's why we're here. Turn it around.
We talk about Indigenous Led being very young, very small now. But my hope for our future there is for us to get the stories out there of not only here at Blackfoot territory, but to be able to go on further and to help other tribes or organizations or just people to learn the ways and the little things that I talked about earlier, that to be able to do those and bring that out there and get those stories told in our way of the Indigenous way and getting those out there. That's their stories, not somebody else's, that they're able to be telling their stories from them. I want to be able to that in the future, that's what we're able to bring to whoever may want that. And I talked about how we never turn people away or we never hurt people, that we bring them in, whether they're from us or not, that we bring them in. So I want us to go in the future that being able to help others who want to return buffalo, free roaming, but not only buffalo. There's a lot of the animals that to us as Indian people that are very sacred to us. They all are. And that we work with them in whatever way that they want to, and that we're able to do that, to be able to help them. But the biggest thing is that they're able to get their story out there. And that's why we want to call it Indigenous Led, that it's them, it's their story. It's not somebody else coming and saying, oh, this is your story, or we're going to tell your story. That's my hope for our future. There's a long ways to go for us, and there's going to be obstacles, but the buffalo will make us strong, will help us, will lead us, will teach us, and help us to be able to help others. And I think that's a real good thing, a real big thing. We want to make it their story from them. Indigenous Led.
So we're almost 3 years old, let's say. That's a young organization, and we're small. But even from our very get-go, we were audacious and bold. You could almost say maybe a little crazy about what we were being called to do. And nothing short of changing the world, healing the world. And we say that with zero arrogance. It comes from a place of devoted love, fierce love, as we like to say, and humility. And so when I think about the next 2 or 400 years, it's a long time, I won't be here. I think about what would I like to see us achieve? Where are we going? And I think in a lot of ways, if you really embrace all the challenges that we face as people, as place, as planet, they're tremendous. And the only thing that I can think of is we have to build a movement. We have to build a movement that honors all the voices, all the perspectives, all the talents, all the pain, and elevate it, amplify it, embolden it. And so how do we do that? We're already starting to do it, even as a tiny startup, because those buffalo don't accept. I mean, shoot, there was 90 million of them roaming over the entire continent. You think they're comfortable with staying in a tiny pen? No. And as an organization that comes from buffalo, that's inspired by buffalo, are we tiny and going to stay in a little box, a little pen? We've always worked at a big scale. So that movement is what I'd really love to see us start to gain even more traction around. How do we work at a very local, place-based, community-driven, community-informed scale, but also at the scale of the continent, or maybe even globally? We have brothers and sisters that are reaching out. They're Maori. There's no buffalo in Aotearoa, but they want to know about buffalo and how we're bringing buffalo back. Why? Because it's a god. And it has so much wisdom for all of humanity. I want to build a global movement. Can we do that in 2 years? Will Ervin let me? That is the question. As I mentioned, we're a young organization. I lovingly describe Indigenous LED as a baby organization, a startup. And we have done so much incredible work on a tiny budget with a tiny family or team. That's really challenging. Some days I'm cleaning toilets, some days I'm cleaning pots and pans, some days I'm touring Jane Goodall around the Blackfeet Reservation. And I love that. I love that. But it's hard. Also, as a young organization, we are trying to create something that's never existed. We are imagining the unimagined, right? Thank goodness we're guided by buffalo and beaver and our other relatives and our knowledge keepers and stories and songs, because to hold responsibility for what we're being called to do, even with somebody as tremendous as Ervin and our team, is daunting and terrifying and really challenging. You end up feeling like you can never do enough and it's never good enough. And then because we are having an impact and because we are working in places where a lot of healing of people and culture and spirit and land is happening and needs to happen, we become a very easy target. For better or for worse, envy is a huge part of humanity. And we've been the recipient of that. And that's really tough. But one of the things that I love about challenges is they make you great and they make you strong and they make you think outside the box. And they are a phenomenal teacher. And I wouldn't change the challenges that we've had for the world, because one of the most profound things that's happened is I come out of conservation. I come out of stewardship. I come out of loving animals since before I could walk. And so for me, conservation was the only, because of my upbringing, because of living between worlds, because of a very long story of how I ended up where I am, conservation is the space that I was given to operate in. But it's so limiting. And in many cases, it's so wrong. It doesn't work. There is data. It doesn't work. And yet that's what I knew. That's what I spoke. But over the last 2 years, as we had experiences that were challenging, as we had to really think about who are we? Who am I even? Why do I have the privilege of doing this? What we've come to realize is we're not a conservation organization. We're an organization dedicated to healing. People, culture, spirit, land, buffalo, beaver, everything, all of it. Conservation is just one tool that we have. So again, if we pay attention to these things that come as obstacles, they're sent to us too, because we're not quite on the right path, or we're not seeing something because we have a blind spot, or we weren't ready. I wasn't ready to say I'm about healing. Who the hell am I to say I'm about healing? I'm not healed. What do I have to offer? Guess what Buffalo made me do? Be comfortable saying, I'm a healer. That's what I'm here to do.
A big thing about life is you always have obstacles. I don't think they'll ever go away. You have to learn how to maneuver those. And I think the obstacles that we have went through with Buffalo since I've been in there, with any initiative, with Indigenous led, one of the hard things about obstacles is there is a big healing. There's a big healing from these animals that needs to help with our people, is getting back that respect and to lifting one another up. And Cristina talks about the envy. We should always want to lift each other up, be there behind one another. And I think the colonization, the things that have happened to us have taught us to be against one another, our own people. And I think that's the biggest healing that we have to overcome, is if somebody's doing something good and that they're doing it for a good way, then you should be there, be behind them, and to help them make things happen. And if they're doing things in a good way, then let's help them. Let's make them feel good about what they're doing. I think that's the biggest healing that can come from these, is helping us ourselves to not be against one another, but be there for one another. That's really one of the biggest things that happened to us with this colonization and changing our ways like that. Our people were always for one another and helping one another. I've learned a lot of that too from our late chief, who I became very close with, Earl, and even about Cristina being here. And even that she's not Blackfoot, but I even learned from Earl that we took people in. We never turned people away, and we never was mean to them. There's a lot of other tribes that came to us, and we gave them a place to stay, and they're continually here. So when you have people that come to you, then help them people. That's what I've learned from my late chief, and that's what Buffalo is teaching me.
We'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Indigenous Led podcast, produced by Lailani Upham with Iron Shield Creative and co-producer Josh Adler with Ecologica. The Indigenous Led podcast would not be possible without the wisdom of our ancestors, our knowledge keepers, and the Myriad supporters who follow our work and invest in our efforts to elevate Indigenous voices and build power so Indigenous ways of knowing, being, and doing can be directed to the planetary crisis we are living through. Indigenous Led is a fiscally sponsored project of the Wild Foundation, and we dedicate our inaugural podcast to our Buffalo relatives, their homelands, and our partners from across Sitsikatepec. If you'd like to listen to more of the Indigenous-led conversations, please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram at Indigenous_LED. And follow our work at indigenousled.org.